Carl Theodor Dreyer was without a doubt one of our greatest directors, one of our most important directors in terms of how films have developed, played out, techniques directors have used, so on and so forth. And I wanted to talk about three of his films from the Criterion Collection that I'm hoping, this director doesn't fall by the wayside since some are out of print. I'm hoping at some point or another, all of them will end up in the collection. Because I recently watched one of his films and just really enjoyed it. Kind of caught me by surprise. But I think back to the very first one I saw, The Passion of Joan of Arc, the great silent film. Spiritual rapture and institutional hypocrisy come to stark, vivid life in one of what the Criterion calls the transcendent masterpieces of the silent era. And this deals with Joan of Arc, her trial, how she was mistreated. Bresson did a film as well. I think this one's a little better, even as much as I like Bresson. And Roger Ebert talks a little bit about the construction of the film, why it's so great, and how effective it is, and I wanted to read you a quote from him. He said, "To modern audiences raised on films where emotion is conveyed by dialogue and action more than by faces. A film, like The Passion of Joan of Arc, is an unsettling experience, so intimate. We feel we will discover more secrets than we desire. Our sympathy is engaged so powerfully with Joan that Dreyer's visual methods, his angles, his cutting, his close-ups don't play like stylistic choices, but like the fragments of Joan's experience." And I can say that every time I've watched this film, I have been scarred almost. The aching humanity, the terror that this woman experiences makes this really one of the better, in some people's mind, the best performances out there from an actress. We talk about Gena Rowlands and some of her great performances. And maybe if it weren't for her or Setsuko Hara, this might be my favorite. And there's just this rare, special quality to this film that we can take a figure like Joan of Arc and we can make this almost every man. All of us have felt alone. All of us have had our back against the wall at some point or another. And all of us have been out of options, running out of time, feeling like nothing we do works. At the same time with this film, it's interesting how we can never really tell her total motivations. Is this entirely spiritual? Is it egotistical? A lot of both? I don't know. And it's a really fascinating watch. And I love that about Dreyer. His films can have that kind of positive ambiguity. Speaking of which, I have the BFI set of a few Dreyer films, which this is a really bare bones release. But there was one that was filmed during the Nazi occupation of Denmark. It's called Day of Wrath. I've long been partial to this film. And at, the start of this, there are some illustrations. Yeah, here it is. I think this is it, Day of Wrath. There's some illustrations of a religious sort that almost immediately foreshadows all of the terrifying events that are to come. It's the 1600s. This witch wanders in this village. She's persecuted in one of the most convincing scenes in black and white history, one of the most terrifying. Just awful, everything that happens to this witch. But that's sort of a side story to the bigger story. This second wife of this older minister ends up having, a little bit of a chemistry with the stepson. And you can kind of imagine if he's older and she's younger, and then the stepson is younger, kind of what that might lead to. There's such a desperation in the film. And the mother who serves as the devil of the film. I mean, she's nasty. I had written down a while ago that I thought of her as a reverse Ma Jode from The Grapes of Wrath, the great John Ford picture. She's just nasty. Like, the indoors of this film, the set pieces, they create a prison, much like The Passion of Joan of Arc when Joan's locked up. And there's very little freedom, very little intellectual freedom, if you don't follow the status quo, what terror you might face, what hopelessness you might face. It is one of those films that makes you feel like you are in a haunted house by a fireplace with all the lights going out and the fire slowly dying around you because you have nowhere to turn. I love that thing about Dreyer. All of his films just feel like they're just dipped in charcoal and ash and sadness. But I think as emotionally taxing as these two films are, I just watched, and I did not know this film would be this good. I just watched Gertrude. And this was his last film, which is also in this BFI pack. There's some brilliant scenes of her in the mirror. Brilliant, brilliant mirror scenes in this film. Gertrude is a very lonely film. And at its core, I think it's an examination of how age changes what we want, what we need, how relationships evolve or devolve, and how sad and lonely that can be. The kind of apathy it can lead us to, the kind of opposite, the kind of badness it can lead us to. Her husband, early on, we know the marriage isn't very good. Her marriage to this Gustav fella. We meet two other gentlemen, and we have to learn whether they are romantic entanglements or not. One of them is Gabriel Liedman, a poet who's talks a lot about things from the past, and again, that emphasis on age and relationships and how things evolve. And then there's a young man named Erland Janssen, who's a pianist and a composer, and so she sings, and as a result, they have some interactions singing while he plays, and we see that he can be quite immature. Yet, all of these characters I've mentioned, they have flaws, they have insecurities, but I think in some ways they all kind of have good parts to them. Some are better than others. This is not a film that demonizes Gertrude for her decisions, some of which might be questionable. I think about a film like The Worst Person in the World, which I was looking at that director and that actress in some of her films, sentimental value, which I want to see. And I can't imagine a lot of those kinds of films existing without something like Gertrude. The blocking in the film is really underrated. I hear a lot about high and low and how that's blocked so well, but there are frames in this where a character has to be blocked exactly correctly, because if not, the portrait or the picture that's hanging above the two characters, it doesn't work as well. And you'll notice that it's not one of those things that's pretentious, but as the characters move, sometimes very slowly, very methodically and deliberately, you can kind of see how the director made that decision to craft the scene in that way. And it matters because there's so much talking. It's such a slow burn that even the decision about where to put the particular actor and at what angle matters more than in most films. And I appreciate that so much about this. This film left me with a lot to think about. I think you could come to many different conclusions. I think you could view this as some anarchist, delve into oblivion. If you wanted to think about that in that way, I think you could look at it as very politically conservative in some ways. You could look at it as nothing political, apolitical. You could look at it as a great statement about women's rights or feminism, and then in some ways you may not even see that. I mean, what I'm getting at is that there's so many conclusions at which the viewer can arrive that I loved it. And I loved, again, that Dreyer was such a strong director that we can have all these different thoughts and they can kind of bounce off each other, and you never know where you might land. So those are three I wanted to discuss today because I know some of you collect quite a few Criterions, and I wanted you to go down that rabbit hole if you haven't and see what you think. If you liked the video today, want to click the thumbs up button, I'd appreciate it. Tell me your thoughts on this director and subscribe to Cody in the Cinema.